Welcome to the Awakening Women podcast. I'm your host, Leanne Oaten, and former therapist with a background in counseling psychology. This podcast is for strong, high-achieving women who want more in their lives and relationships, who are ready to rise to the next level of growth, healing, and evolution. Nothing changes until you change. And when you change, everything else changes around you as a result. If you're done with feeling powerless within the chaotic and toxic dynamics in your relationship and don't even know where to begin with making changes, I've got you covered. I know you've tried everything, including counseling, watching hours of videos, and reading stacks of books on narcissism, and find that all it does is leave you feeling even more stuck and in the same place. None of these things work when you're living with a narcissistic spouse because the root causes of the symptoms are not being addressed. As with physical health, there is an emotional, physical, spiritual, and psychological component to healing and overcoming the problematic symptoms and pain you're facing every day in your life and relationship. If you're ready for a direct, no fluff, no nonsense approach to take you into your personal power and take back your life, you are in the right place. Let's get started with today's episode. Welcome back to the Awakening Women podcast. In this episode, we're talking about 4 mistakes that I see women make in those early days and months after leaving a narcissistic or toxic relationship. And these are things that come over time and time again, and they're things that you would be probably doing if you didn't know any better. So the first is confiding too much in people who make them feel worse. So this can even be parents, siblings, even friends that don't understand what you just got out of. And even if they do, they still cannot help you fully, right? They may be able to do their best to support you, but they may say things that don't feel supportive, that just make you feel worse. And typically it's family that's really good at this. And they can trigger you. It's like they know how to push your buttons because they installed them. Have you ever heard that joke? So they know exactly, maybe they're not even doing it on purpose, but they are triggering something within you. And in those early months, everything feels raw. It's like when you have a skin burn and the skin that you burn is really tender to the slightest touch. That's how your nervous system is when you first get out. That's how your emotional resilience is. So you will feel very triggered and raw and vulnerable. So I really recommend that you avoid confiding in people who make you feel worse. And really, we shouldn't be using our friends and family as therapists and coaches anyways. So we can rely on them and get clear on how it is that we want them to best support us during this time. But I also recommend to women is you're better off cocooning and being very selective about who you're talking to in that first while because it is so raw and vulnerable. And this is a really great time to hire a coach or have a good therapist that can help you move through this and hopefully have someone on standby when you are in need, because you will have those moments where you're reaching for some kind of support or grounding and nobody will be there, or the people that you do have don't help you feel better and they don't empower you to make your situation better. Number 2 is, it's kind of piggybacking off of number 1, is over-reliance on friends and family as your support system. We can burn out our friends and family, even if they're the most well-meaning and close family and friends. But oftentimes this isn't the case, that there is some, dysfunctional relationships with siblings and parents. This is why we end up in these situations to begin with. And so they will say things that are just really insensitive or things that don't help, like, oh, the kids aren't doing well because you left, or I don't understand why you left, or why you didn't just make it work, or whatever. There's many things that can be said. And in those early months, you need nothing but supportive people around you. So do what you can to protect yourself and cocoon yourself and not rely on friends and family. So this is also and I teach this in my course, Thriving After Narcissistic Abuse, is learning how to self-soothe and learning how to handle those really tough emotions that make you feel like you need to quickly reach out to someone else and use other people as your soother instead of learning how to soothe yourself. Now, of course, it's important to have relationships and people that you can count on, but I like to teach women to learn how to do this first, and then after they've done the work to clear it on their own, then reach out to that friend or someone that you know is a support. So this is, again, it goes back to the first, is this person a supportive person though? So rather than just going and venting everything and emotionally vomiting everything on your friends and family that are supportive of you, if they're not, then you shouldn't be going to them. That's when you need to hire out, find a coach, find a good therapist that you can process these things with. But learning some of your own tools is key, because you're going to have those moments when you need to just learn how to work through some of your own stuff that's coming up. This is how we build self-confidence and emotional resiliency, is learning how to work with our emotions and our triggers when we are flooded, or when we're having flashbacks or memories, or things are coming in that are really overwhelming and triggering. Yes, it's great to have someone that is there to support you and walk you through it and help you, but we don't always all have those kinds of people. I was lucky to have people like that in my life at that time when things were really difficult, but you may not. And so it's developing that plan for what you will do when you don't have someone in your corner during those times of need. And number 3 is continuing contact that is unnecessary with their ex, and then they're getting triggered and emotionally dysregulated. So what I see is that they're saying, oh, I need to have contact with him because my kids play sports, or because this or that. But there's a lot of things you can do. And maybe you know, as tough as it is, like for your own healing, do you need to go to all the sports things, sport events? You know, it might mean that you lose out on some of that, and maybe you're not okay with that, but it is about, you know, looking at the pros and cons. Like, what is it like having to go to these sporting events and see your ex every week or however many times a week, just so you can see your kid playing, and maybe you're fine. Maybe you keep your distance and you're fine. But I always say to women, like, really look at all the areas that you have contact with this person, especially in that first year when you're just raw and everything's healing, is very minimal contact. You know, just literally, like, do you have to say this to him? Do you have to text him? Do you have to answer that? Do you need to see him? Can you forego going to events that, even if your kids are there? You know, I know that's a tough decision and a sacrifice. However, you have to look at your health and healing as your paramount focus. And your kids aren't going to think back to you like never being at their sport events if they know it's for a period of time, or if they're old enough, you're able to explain to them why you can't, right? There's things that you can do. This is just an example. Maybe it's not possible, but I just see a lot of women, because I work with a lot of women and coach a lot of women, that are still in unnecessary contact with the ex, and it just creates so much emotional turmoil and turbulence in their lives when they've left, and they are still behaving like they're in the relationship and they owe something to that person, and they feel like they need to respond to every triggering email or hook that they're trying to get them into some kind of back and forth. So that is a big one. And then the last and the fourth is they're neglecting basic wellness maintenance. So I know in that first year or two, things you're trying to stabilize. You're trying to, you know, gather your wits to continue on, especially if you have kids and you have other things you need to keep doing. And neglecting your health and wellness around not getting movement. Maybe you are using alcohol or food or sugar or shopping or whatever else to soothe your stress and numb your emotions. And this is the worst thing you can do, because right now you need to be giving your body everything it needs to heal through all of this stress and this trauma, right? Like leaving a relationship is a trauma, even if it's not toxic, but it's like a death, right? So you have to see, like, divorce is like one of the top few stressors in life, as far as, like, I think divorce is the second, as opposed to losing someone to death, as the top stressors. So don't take it lightly. And then you also are dealing with trauma, maybe some PTSD, because you came from an abusive situation. And so you need to make sure that you're doing those basic wellness practices of walking, of doing the things that you need to do to take care of yourself, making sure you're getting enough protein, even if you're not super hungry, but making sure when you do eat, it's nutrient dense, healthy fats and protein, so that you keep your blood sugar balanced, so your body's able to adapt to the stressors. When we are not eating enough protein and our blood sugar is all over the place, maybe you're having a lot of carbs and comfort eating, this increases cortisol, which can throw the rest of our hormones off the charts and out of whack. So making sure, if above anything else that you're doing, is making sure you're getting enough protein and movement, and do your best to get good sleep. So there's a lot you can do with sleep hygiene. So those are 4 big ones that I see women making in those early days and early months after leaving their relationship. If you'd like a full process on how to recover on the other side of leaving a narcissistic relationship, I have a course. I have a course that gives you lifetime access to the materials and a Facebook group, and it walks you through all of how to recover on the other side, as well as how to heal. It's about how do you not stay in the, feeling like you're still trapped in the dynamics when you're not, right? So what we cover in there is keep calm and go no contact. We cover the aftershock of leaving and the emotional shock that comes after, rewiring your nervous system, how to become your own soulmate and stop looking outward for love, validation, and acceptance. This is a big one, huge one, and it's why we end up in these types of situations. How to deal with a difficult ex when you still have to be in no contact, or when you still have to be in contact, that's when you have kids and maybe you have events that we're talking about. So how do you deal with those situations? Identifying your traits that make you a match for toxic partners, dating and avoiding another narcissistic or unhealthy relationship, and leaving the relationship and going no contact. So we're talking about those aspects of how to stay in no contact. And then there's also some bonus materials of somatic healing, breaking the cycle of self-blame and guilt, and being an HSP, so a highly sensitive person, and empath, so learning more about yourself there, and parenting with a narcissistic ex. So it's a pretty fully packed course, and you can take it at your own pace. Ask any questions in the Facebook group for students of the program. I'll leave the link in the show notes, or you can head to my courses page, leanneoten.com/courses. So I hope this has been helpful and maybe given you something to think about if you are in the last phase of leaving your relationship, you're moving on, or you have already left, is just to pay attention to some of these patterns that we can get ourselves in that hinder our healing and make us feel worse when we already feel like shit, right? The last thing you want to do is do things that make you feel worse when you're in this situation. All right, that's it for this episode, and I'll chat with you in the next one. Take care. Thanks so much for tuning in to this edition of the Awakening Women podcast. If you love this episode, please take a moment to share it and leave a 5-star rating and review. If you're ready to take your next step, head to the link in the show notes to sign up for my latest free class. Also, be sure to follow me over on Instagram at Awakening Women Official and join the conversation. Thanks so much for tuning in, and I'll catch you again in the next episode. Take care of yourself in the meantime, and I'll see you online.